live.
Nice job.
Let's go. You like the setup?
Nice job setting it up, for
thanks.
sure.
Thank you.
And your
Our black wall.
black wall, setting a legacy in your
That's very
gym.
nice. The gym.
You've been working on this for years.
10 years. A decade
know.
now.
I told somebody that today.
Yeah.
I was like, the guy said he wanted to be in a gym. I told him it was a horrible idea. You should do something else. And then he did it. Anyway, he just waited 10 years.
10 years later.
So,
here we are. I just made bad
cheers.
decisions 10 years later.
Cheers to that. Yep.
So, this will be combined with vodka later.
That sounds like a horrible idea.
Well, we'll make other horrible ideas later. Anyways,
Sweet.
Well, welcome to the first Legacy Minds podcast.
Oh, nice name too.
Yeah, you like that?
I do.
We had that conversation earlier.
You and
Legacy
somebody else.
across everything.
Oh, well, no, but Legacy Minds. I mean, it's good. You're saying something.
We are saying something. You know what we're about. What we're about here. It's the mission, the purpose, all the above. But
I like it.
Yeah. Well, I've known you for a very long time now.
I think it does
8 years.
count. It's
Is it 8 years now?
It's 25% of your life, right?
Shit. I'm not quite as old as you, so that is a big chunk of my life.
It's not 25% of
my
No.
Yeah, but I think let's start at the beginning, and I guess to introduce Jesse or Airman Pimental. He was a salesman for 8 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll work.
And then at 33,
32.
became a
32.
Oh, so you weren't that old.
Yeah, well,
33.
I turned 33 in basic training.
Okay. So, all right, 32. We'll say 33. Became Airman Pimental and a SERE specialist.
Yeah, that checks.
So, I think that I think where we start is what led you into sales initially, and maybe we go back even a little bit further and talk about like where you grew up and how that impacted kind of what led you to Florida.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
there you go.
Go.
Well, born in Baltimore, Maryland, and my family was entirely dysfunctional, as I'm sure most people that would listen to this probably can agree to that with their own family. But my mother decided at 11 that we were going to, so my family divorced at 5, and my father went out to a few places, but he wanted to be an actor. So he went to California when I was 7.
Wait, your dad wanted to be an actor?
He did. Yeah. He wrote a screenplay.
I can't say that surprises me based on your dad, just meeting him, but was not expecting that.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
So at 7, he went to Boston for someone, and that didn't work out. He wrote a screenplay, and I had actually, I can recall reading parts of that screenplay.
Was it good?
And it take like a Christian Steven Seagal screenplay.
Okay.
I mean, because he's that era, he's that era.
Yeah.
And then that was that screenplay. So he wrote it, and then he went out to California, and he was there from when I was 7 to 17. So I spent time there, and he remarried, and
how old were you when you moved from Baltimore to
I was 12.
California with him?
Oh no! I went from Baltimore to Florida, but he went to California when I was 8.
Okay.
7 or 8 years old.
And your mom and dad met in Baltimore?
They met in
Florida?
Baltimore.
Okay.
Yep. Well, I won't divulge too much of his life.
Go into the dirty details there.
Yep. So he met my mother. He came back from California. He took his motorcycle from Baltimore to Los Angeles right after high school.
That'd be a pretty cool trip.
Yep.
I feel like cross country on a bike.
He'd be a pretty interesting person to talk to.
His
journey has been pretty impressive. Is something.
Yeah,
for sure.
It definitely. He's a very interesting man. I feel like crap. I don't want to blow your head up too much, but I feel like
you don't want to do that.
It's already there. But you and your father, I sometimes compare to people or make a comparison to the most interesting man in the world, Mr. Dos Equis. What's his name?
He definitely. I mean, give me 25 years and
maybe
I'll give him a run for his money. But he definitely has done some very interesting things. He's a smart man. So, but he went out there, and then I never lived with him full time. Okay. I'd visit for 6 weeks a year.
Okay.
So we didn't really have a super close relationship. But
I
then
thought you lived out there for a period of time.
I was just there 4 weeks every summer and basically 2 weeks in the winter whenever we had school breaks.
Okay.
So I'd head out there and then yeah. So my mom and stepdad. My mom since passed, but and my stepdad. But so we went out to Florida, and that was to basically seems to be able to separate from the wildness that was the family in Baltimore.
Okay.
And then so I was there from 12 until 19 or so, off and on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Until you
then,
went to college.
Well, I went to school initially. So I mean, this is part of the journey, right? I failed my freshman year of high school.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Me and two of us. There were three of us in this really trashy batch of humans who decided that the better kids were working on good GPA, so we would see who could get the lowest of the three. And
sounds like a great game.
It was a tough competition.
Yeah.
I ended up taking the honors.
Okay.
Of a 0.9 GPA my freshman year of high school.
Look at you now going to law school.
That was insane. Well,
We'll get there.
That's the so that 0.9 so I did not know that I wasn't going to be a sophomore until what I thought was going to be the first day of my sophomore year.
Okay.
I went to school, and this was Ocala, Florida. You went to Forest High School, and I went to the wall, and I was looking for my name on the 10th grade list. And my name wasn't there. So I went to the counselor, and I said, I can't find any of my classes. I mean, I had no idea.
Would you say you learned things the hard way?
I did. That was the first time of all of the poor decisions I had made to that. I mean, I was caught shoplifting when I was 9.
I did that too.
That was horrible.
I may have been a little bit younger, but
I mean,
and my grandfather may have encouraged it.
Oh, no, they did not encourage us. My mother lost her mind on the cop. Now, she was probably a 12-pack of Milwaukee's Best deep at that time.
Right.
Yeah.
Was that her choice?
That was the go. Well, I mean.
Milwaukee's Best?
Milwaukee's Best.
Not Busch Lattes?
Dude, that would have been expensive. With Milwaukee's Best, I mean, I'm sure it's great. Sure, beer. I don't want to be derogatory about anything on there, but I mean, aluminum does have a cost.
Sure.
And you do have to recollect that aluminum cost. But
right.
So yeah, so that happened, and then I ended up. That changed my life. I guess that was probably a pivotal change because I did want to join the military, and I.
How old were you when you knew you wanted to join the military?
13, 14 years old. Yep. I did not want to go to college. I only wanted to do something physical. Mm-hmm. And so that freshman year happened, but I had no real guidance. Right. My stepdad worked 3 jobs, and my mom worked 2 or 3 jobs.
What was your relationship like with your stepfather?
It was fine until 15. Okay. Until I started to hit a stride where I realized I was making some really questionable decisions that failing that year, and then doing whatever it took to get back on track. So I think that was a big win for me. And I was looking around at like my immediate family, and I was like, well, they're not going. I don't know what's going on. This is not. But I don't want to look like this.
Yeah.
And they were lovely people. They worked hard. They definitely worked hard. They worked very hard. But I didn't want to raise my family the way that I was being raised.
Dysfunctional.
For sure.
Okay.
So and I mean, they drink a lot. So it was definitely, there were times where I would come home and there was no dinner. So they would like wake up, and one of them would wake up and remember that I should eat dinner. And they would take me to Burger King for the $1 chicken sandwich.
Okay.
And that was my dinner. And I was like, oh, this is horrible. I do not like this. So, and then at 15, I went into the counselor's office and I was like, hey, I don't know where my name is. And they said, well, that's because you were looking in the wrong place. You're still in 9th grade. And that was like a serious like light bulb. Like I am now suffering from my decisions. And I knew, so it wasn't like I didn't blame anybody else. I was like, well, what do I need to do so that I graduate with my class in 2001? Like, what I need, this is fine. Okay. I was signed up for ROTC, junior, whatever it was in high school, junior ROTC. And the colonel, would have been a great influence in my life. Yeah. I remember the guy, and he wanted me to be a part of it, but I couldn't. I had to drop all electives, and I had to retake all core classes that I failed, which were all classes that were core were failed. So I took the first semester, had to redo that, and then the second semester I was able to take all core classes for sophomore. So I was ineligible for sports. It was pretty bad all around. But then at that same time, my history teacher ended up being a huge influence. Shout out to Coach Heisey, probably Coach still Heisey. Out there. Coach Heisey. He was the assistant wrestling coach. Okay. And that man was a wild man.
What was your big sport in high school? Or did you play in? Because I know you said
football, wrestling. Okay. I thought I was going to be a great basketball player and that didn't work out.
How tall are you
didn't
now?
Make the team.
5'9"?
Same height that I was when I was a freshman in high school. So yeah, it didn't work out. We
all have dreams.
Yep. I had that dream, and then they cut me from the basketball team.
Wonder why.
And that was a punch in the gut. Yeah. But it was fun.
So fast forward to when you you're out at your dad's. I know, like you said, you've lived in a pretty interesting spot out there. Because he was a financial advisor at that time, right?
So I finally caught up, graduated, and so my senior year I was homeschooled. Because my dad brought me in, and he flew into Ocala and took me to the Hilton Hotel for dinner, which is the nicest place that you could have eaten dinner in Ocala at that time. And there was one other spot, but it didn't make it. The Hilton still made it. So he said, "What's your plans for college?" Yeah. And I was like, "I'm joining the military." And he's like, I didn't know that he was not a supporter. But he's smooth dad. And instead of talking trash about what my plan was, he just eloquently moved me to his plan.
He just saved that for 15 years.
He did. Little did he know it was never going to go away. But he at that year 16, he brought me in, and then he's like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" I told him, and then he said, well, what kind of car do you want? Okay. And I told him what I wanted.
Jeep Wrangler?
Jeep Wrangler. And he said, okay, well, if you agree to, a couple things, then I'll buy you the Jeep. Okay. And I could get the Jeep before I did those things that he was asking for. Okay. So that was pretty cool. Yeah. And then
how many years later after getting the Jeep was it T-boned by a moose?
My Jeep was not T-boned by the moose. My parents' Jeep Cherokee was T-boned by a moose. Had I been in the Wrangler, I would have died.
That's very possible.
That's what the cop said. Cop said, you wouldn't admit it. Because there was no top, no doors, no nothing. And it was Park City, Utah.
Did it roll it?
The Jeep?
Yeah.
No, no, somehow it didn't.
It didn't roll it, but it
didn't roll the Jeep Cherokee.
How fast were you going?
62 miles an hour.
You have had really good luck with vehicles.
Yeah, there's stories that won't even come up.
We'll get to those another time.
They won't come. Yeah, that's going to be way down the line. Yeah, there's people who may listen to this and be like, I know one of those stories. Yeah. So I ended up going and living with him, and that was an impactful year because then it was like, okay, I see the other side of what life can look like. Yeah. And I got to travel all over the country, go to museums. My dad's approach was incredibly helpful for somebody that was very active.
What clarify that?
So we went to Barnes and Noble, and we bought our own books. Okay. So we went, I guess by today's standards, the hot topic word would be unschooling. There's some people that are pretty well known that talk about how they do unschooling for their children.
And that would be
it's self-directed.
Okay, so it's kind of more of a homeschool approach.
It's a homeschool approach, but without a curriculum. Okay. So it's radical. Like, nobody is coming and saying, "Oh, well, you're not teaching the right stuff." In order to do it that way, I went to this. I had to go to the state of California to take a test, a proficiency test, which gave me a high school diploma instead of a GED.
Okay.
So, which was very cool. So, I mean, I remember going there with him. To that point, I had never read a book in my life.
And how old were you?
17.
Okay.
I still had not read a book. So, yeah, I had a lot of making up to do. So we bought a book. He's like, hey, what are you interested in? We bought a book on Alexander the Great. We bought something on Shakespeare. He made me read some Latin, which I don't think ever stuck. And then we did math and science. Okay. And he picked out some of the stuff. I picked out the other stuff. And then we had a pretty set curriculum. I read the Bible every morning. I worked out every day at 6, which was not his curriculum. And then at 7, I had Bible with breakfast. I watched the news. And then I did the core stuff that he would work with me on. And then that's how it went for a year. And then he would travel for work, and he was doing some finance stuff and some technology stuff for a law firm. I'm not gonna say the name, sure. But the guy was a sports agent, and he had offices in 4 hot cities.
Right.
So I would go with my dad, and then we would go to the museums, and then one of my responsibilities was write some essay about something or how it impacted history. It was really pretty cool. But while I was there, then I was like, well, all of this is a replica. We were in Pittsburgh one time, and I was like, everything in this museum is like a replica of something else. Yeah. Like, where's the real thing? And then so I really wanted to do that. He made that happen. So then the end of that year, my senior year, went to California. Got my high school diploma. We went to Europe, went to the real museums, did the real thing. That was an awesome experience. I probably never thought I would ever go back to Europe after that. Okay. But then, and I lived in New York City during 9/11, and that was another. I didn't know that. That was another. Okay. Yep. So
I mean, I knew you lived there, but I didn't know.
Yeah, we drove from Florida to Utah. So my dad hated Florida. So we went there. He only moved there for me, and he bought a house in Park City 3 months after he had moved to Florida. We were there on a ski trip, and he's like, hey, how do you feel about moving to Park City and going to college in Utah? And I was like, sitting there, and this place is amazing. I had no idea how beautiful it was. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, sounds great. So then so 2 days later, he takes me to the builder, and they pick out their spot, and they buy the house. Okay. So he has to sell the house in Tampa as soon as possible. And then we get out to Utah. So as I finished that year, and then the summer I spent with my friends in Ocala, we drove to Utah. I was on a plane 12 hours later to live in the city because I had to build residency in Utah. Okay. And who he worked for had an apartment in Midtown Manhattan. And so I lived there for, I guess, 6 months. And it just so happened that...
By yourself?
Well, he was like doing general contracting for this guy. My dad was doing the general contracting because the guy had bought a second apartment connected. And they were taking down a wall and then completely redoing the entire apartment. Okay. And somehow my dad knows how to do that. Sure. And knew how to run it, and hired everybody, drew out the plans, did all the architecture. Yeah. And it turned into a really nice Manhattan apartment. That guy wasn't there during the construction, and my dad was there back and forth. Okay. So I got a job working at a restaurant that's no longer there on 57th and 7th next to the Russian Tea Room. And then 9/11 happened, and that changed the city, and was pretty impactful. I was, I talked to our candidates about how that was how
far away were you from?
Like 50 blocks. We were in Midtown, and it happened downtown. So I saw so at 7:45, I was walking back from the gym and the doorman, this place had a doorman, which is, I've never had a doorman before.
So bougie.
That was the bougiest I've ever been in my life. The doorman opened, said, Mr. Pimental, and I'm like 18 years old. And he said a plane just flew into the trade centers. Okay. And I had just been down to the trade centers because my father worked there in the 80s. Okay. He was a stockbroker for some financial firm. And that's where they did all their training, even though he was from Baltimore. And so he wanted to take me down there so that I could experience what it was like to see 80,000 people leave 2 buildings. And at the time, Ocala, Florida had 60,000 people.
Yeah.
So
there were 160,000 people in those two buildings.
No, total. Yep.
Total. There was more than the city of Ocala.
Yep. That was like one of his takeaways for me was like, you would need to understand the importance of this place, of what's going on down here.
Right.
And that was 10 days before.
Okay.
So we grabbed a cup of coffee and we just sat there and we talked about like his experience and what it's like to get on the elevator, or what it was like to get on an elevator that goes up there and a great experience on his behalf. And I'm really glad that he took me down there, because as a kid from Ocala, I did not really understand I would not have really understood the magnitude.
No, I think it's hard when you're from a small town to understand what exactly is out there. I grew up in Indiana and spent most of my time here, and oh gosh, technical difficulties. Don't know what's happening. Hey, there we go.
Cool. There it is.
Yeah. So without exposure to that, I mean, I feel like you have a lot of small minds in small towns.
And it's not that
it's nobody's fault. It's just exposure. You have to seek that exposure out if you're not given that exposure as a child.
And I didn't seek it out. I wasn't interested, but my father knew that it was important, and I'm glad he did. So I went down, and then we came back, and that event, it occurred, and the guy pulls the door and tells me, I go upstairs. The second plane hits. Yeah. Well, I have to still be at work. I have a morning shift at this restaurant, and talk about a bougie restaurant. Like they were selling like $15 martinis 20 years ago. I mean, don't even know what they cost now.
I think you're the one who introduced me to bougie. Because when I met you, it was in a little cafe, coffee shop,
there you go.
Downtown Carmel.
Gone.
No longer
sadly
there.
Sad. R.I.P. Soho.
Mayor Brainerd for making Carmel more beautiful.
Yeah, that's what he says. But he did a great job.
He did a great
job. Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll get to talk to him. We'll see.
He walks on the Monon.
Does he? Well,
I've run by him multiple times. He's a very jolly fellow. He's probably not going to be, he's going to get picked up for more important things.
Probably.
I'm almost positive. Feel pretty certain about that.
I mean, he's done a good job with Carmel. As much as we can.
Other towns try to be like Carmel.
Right. Fishers.
Well, no, I mean, outside of Indiana, other towns are like, I like those roundabouts. Yeah. It's funny when I have.
No, we're up there in the ranks, which is good. You never would think that middle of Indiana would be.
I know. It's the only reason to be here. But that happened. Trade centers happened. Yep. We talked. I felt an interesting inclination, of course, as somebody who had wanted to serve. Yep. I had friends who were signing up. Because it's your war fighters are coming from your small towns, and they did stepped up, and I was really hard pressed. My dad and I ate breakfast together on the 12th, and I couldn't make a call. It was my mother's birthday. Couldn't make a call to her because all the lines were down.
Really?
But some very sad, like there was a guy. He was smoking at the restaurant. He was smoking a cigarette in the non-smoking section. And which that changes everything because you used to be able to smoke in restaurants in New York City, but he had his he was sweaty. It was like 11:45. He was sweating. He was smoking. He was drinking. And at first, I was frustrated. I was like, "Why is this guy, smoking and not smoking?" But then I was like, "Something's wrong." So I walked over to him and I just asked him, do you need anything else? And he's like, yeah, I need to know where my daughters are. Oh, because his daughters were going to school downtown. And I never know what happened. Yeah. And he couldn't do anything. There was nothing for him to do. Right. And then that night, it was also an interesting place because that night, I had the opportunity. No flights were going in or out of the city. So everybody's stuck. So all they did was go drink. And they came to a bar or bars and they drank and they talked about their feelings. And it was an interesting experience to just be able to listen to them share their thoughts in New York City. With some of those thoughts that they shared, the country, 20 years later, has asked those same questions that they were asking that night. So it was a pretty powerful moment. But my dad he of course talked me out of serving after that next day. And
what was his reasoning for trying to talk you out of it?
Well, his specific reasoning was we're going to engage in a conflict which isn't going to go anywhere because it's not a country. it was an ideology. And that's his idea. I mean, whether he was right or not, I mean, that's for other people to decide whether that's correct or not. But the war on terror.
You want to answer your take on that?
Not yet.
Right.
But
one day.
I mean, the war on terror that's an idea. Sure. And his whole thing was, how do you engage in that? Yeah, I mean, because it's a worldwide idea.
Right.
Like it's, and who defines that? And does that definition change over time? Mm-hmm. And then you look at what was happening at that moment in 2001, who the president, the actions that were taking place. How do you handle that? And the bottom line was, I was never going to disappoint my dad. I didn't want to disappoint my dad. He had become the greatest influence. He led me to the faith.
At that point.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I felt like I needed to fight that battle.
Right.
To do what he thought was best, which was important for someone who didn't really have any actual drive. I had drive, but I had no direction.
No direction at that.
It was all thrust and no vector is what we would. That's
which,
what we would say.
I mean, we could go down this rabbit hole another time, but I mean, I feel like that's why, especially in where we live now, so many kids get into drugs, porn, video games, all this drive.
Yeah, they don't have.
They don't know what to do with it at that age.
And they don't have anybody that apparently is that figure. It doesn't. It was my father, but it could have been Coach Heisey. It could have been someone who was willing to step in and that I wanted to make proud.
Yeah.
Some of these kids apparently, or a lot of them, don't have that figure.
It's hard to want to make someone proud. You're not proud of yourself.
Well, that's why I think some of the discussions are that it doesn't have to be, the community matters. Mm-hmm. The community matters.
Well, it takes a village to raise kids too.
That's what some famous people have said.
I mean, you need different influences in your kid's life because you're not going to be everything. Yeah. But at the same point, you need respectable men around, and we don't have too much of that right now.
Well, we don't really
in society.
We seem to.
They're out there, but there's not. It's not that's not the mainstream.
Right, and then it's attacked. Mm-hmm. But do we want to go that route, or do you?
We don't have to go that route right now.
It's up to you.
I mean, we can go that route another time. But yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that gets.
So you're in college in Utah.
Went to college. Yeah, I ended up going. Left the city. So lost soul. Originally, I went to school for exercise physiology.
Is that the same thing as exercise science? Or
beats me. I don't know. It's something like that.
One of the many three.
One of those. It didn't matter. I
went to school to be a personal trainer.
I wanted to work with a sports team. And then I found out that I needed, I think something came up where I was going to have to go to grad school. Which meant more school, which I already wasn't great at.
Yeah.
So that sounded like a bad idea.
Mm-hmm. And the narrative
at
that time was college, go to college.
Well, and my father, that was, it seemed like that was my father's direction. Mm-hmm. It was, and he paid for it. So at that time.
Did you finish or did you drop out?
Then?
Yeah.
Or
did you finish college?
I finished. I did finish.
So you came out with a kinesiology degree?
No, not then. That's what I'm saying. No.
Well, what was your degree then?
When I finished it all said and done, it's a degree in interdisciplinary studies with an emphasis in history and economics. That's what it is.
Is that a thing today still?
It is a thing. Okay. Yeah. Actually, it's more of a thing today than it was then.
Well,
I mean, the idea of interdisciplinary studies is
what does that even mean?
Right. So you have your disciplines, which are hyper-focused. Okay. So history, that individual is focused on history. That's their discipline.
Okay.
Economics, that's their focus. That's their discipline.
Right.
That's their degree. They don't really get into, but when one studies something, any discipline, it inevitably has consequences that are outside the scope of just that discipline.
Okay.
Air quotes. So when you look at history, I mean, history, take any conflict, right? Mm-hmm. What's one of the things that everyone says? They all say, follow the money. Well, the money is economics. So if you're following like history of any specificity, oftentimes it'll come down to something that involves economics. It takes money to fight a war. It takes money to do everything that we do. And so in that case, they are uniquely, nicely wrapped and tied, but what I was attempting to do was a philosophy, politics, and economics degree.
Okay.
The school that I was going to dropped that, and from their catalog.
Okay.
So I had to do something with this amalgamation of credits that included, cell biology,
right,
and anatomy and physiology, and history, and economics, and
so is
philosophy.
interdisciplinary
Studies.
Is that just a fancy word for general studies?
No, because there is a school of general studies.
Okay.
Which is a whole nother thing.
So that would be different.
Yeah, it would be different. So the interdisciplinary. So that person who graduates with that had a focus in most likely 2 arenas. I don't want to speak too broadly because I'm not sure how every place handles it, but where I went, that was how they handled it. You had basically an emphasis on two disciplines.
Okay.
And it made for relatively fun studying.
Yeah.
And
so from there,
so I finally finished.
You graduate. How many years?
At some point.
4, 5.
No.
Oh, you did. Okay.
It took forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we have some light.
And let there be light.
Let there be light.
So but no, I ended up at 21. I was a trainer, and then that
took you back to Florida, or I guess took you back to Florida.
Well, had no desire to go back to Florida, but my dad sold the Utah. He sold the house in Utah, and I had to figure out what I was going to do with myself.
Okay.
So I went back to Utah Ocala, and that again, that was like another formative, change my life kind of thing because ended up meeting who is the mother to my beautiful 3 children. But that so I ended up working for the largest privately owned mortgage company in the country because he owned the gym.
He owned the gym.
He owned the gym.
Okay.
And I which was the nicest gym in the area for sure.
Sounds a little familiar.
Yep. Yeah.
Not that I'm nearly as successful as he is, but
you're not.
Not even close.
He had a really nice plane.
Yeah. We just have a really nice gym.
Yeah, it's a nice gym. He had Italian marble in the bathroom though, and pretty famous people
in the gym.
In the bathroom, yes.
Italian marble.
Flown in.
Well,
he crushed it.
I'm sure some of our members will listen to this. Sorry, guys, we're not getting Italian marble in our bathroom.
The nice thing about CrossFit is the fact that you have a bathroom is an upgrade.
and showers.
And
showers.
Right. I think I've only been to 3 gyms that have a shower. CrossFit.
Yeah.
Well,
so how long did you do? You did that for how many years?
I was a trainer from 19 until 24.
And then he kind of recruited you into...
I told him I was going to leave.
Okay.
I told him I was going to leave, and then he was like, he wasn't the kind of person that he was the one who made those decisions on when people went and stayed. And I know that in retrospect, I didn't know that in the moment, but I attempted to leave twice as a young guy, young buck.
What do you think he saw in you that made him want to keep you? Or was it just an ego play?
I feel inclined to say it was like an ego play because he created a position for me the second time, which was the most lucrative that I'll ever have. But that position did not, there was no reason.
He created a position for you in the mortgage realm or in the gym?
In the mortgage.
Okay.
Yep. No, I was done with the gym.
Okay.
I was done with that. But so I told him I was going to leave and we had some other plans for entrepreneurial stuff.
So when did you decide then to leave mortgages? Because you were
2008. I mean, 2008 financial crisis was that was devastating to really anyone. I had some insulation, but I was incredibly prideful at the time. I had done so well that I had gained some certifications and gained some networking. I thought for sure I could go out on my own and do well, and that wasn't the case.
In mortgages, you wanted to go out on your own.
So I kind of joined up with this with a guy down in Ocala who I had been doing his loans through Taylor Bean, and they ended up being, well, first of all, the whole story is pretty sad. Things happened, and that they did not. So I had left there 3 years before that.
Oh, that happened after you left then.
Okay. It did. I didn't know. Yeah. I had no idea what was what about that? Because I was at a higher level.
Where are they all now? You don't want to say?
I don't know, but some of them are. Some of those individuals were really good people, and I don't know what happened.
Just things.
There's a lot of money that floats back and forth in that business,
and at that time there was not enough regulation.
Some would say that deregulation led to what happened, but certainly when I went out on my own, I mean, I couldn't close a loan. I don't know what to say. Like,
was that
we were
timing,
busy?
You think?
Yeah, timing was horrible. We were very busy.
Okay.
But the banks had tightened up.
Yeah.
To the point to where there was not a lot of other. I mean, it was really hard. I mean, there were a lot of good people that couldn't qualify at that time at Post, and that's there's been a lot said on that whole process. But
so we'll fast forward a little bit from there, and you get into cellular sales in Florida, in Ocala, right?
It was they had a store next to a Starbucks, which was
sounds about right.
150 meters.
I think that was literally every store we ever worked in was 150 meters from a Starbucks.
No. I lived 150 meters from that Starbucks.
Okay.
So I would run my dog
by the
Starbucks, and then there was the store there, and I'm like, my family's going to starve, and I need to figure out what to do.
Humble beginnings.
It was humble pie for sure, because I couldn't imagine going and working there. But
and that was the South Florida market.
No, it was Orlando.
Market.
Yep.
Okay, so
Orlando market.
Some of you may see this that we used to work with. I'm sure, maybe LinkedIn. I guess we'll find out. Who were the regional directors there?
Jeff Curry and Chris Keene.
And you had pretty good amount of respect for those guys, right?
I did. I did. I was closer with one than the other, but not because
Curry?
of. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. He's a good human, and it just so happened that way. Nothing. Mm-hmm. Chris, a great guy. I just communicated more with the other one.
Okay, gotcha.
And
well, that usually happens from the sales side versus the ops side. Yeah, you're either ops or you're sales. Okay, so then you meet and Greg. Greg
is who hired me. Yep.
He hired you, so he was a teammate, right? Yeah,
he was.
Okay.
Yep.
What's up, Greg Carnes? Shout out. You may see.
We had like a 3-hour interview.
Yeah. Greg's a great dude.
Drank coffee and talked about life. And
yeah.
Then he offered me a job, and that was.
Did you like seek out an interview, or did you guys somehow connect down there?
So, well, I met him because something was wrong with my BlackBerry, and it wasn't connecting to our server.
That's wonderful.
And I don't know what to do. I still don't know what to do. Right. But he tried to sell me on something else that I did not need.
A Samsung probably, or an LG.
He just tried to sell me
Android.
It didn't matter. I think he wanted me to add a line. And he's gonna know the story.
If you know, you know.
Yep. Yeah. And I was like, no, I don't need any of that. But it seems strange that he was trying to hustle me like that.
So then Greg gets.
I gave him my resume. I went down there and I was like, man, I got to figure something out. And he was driving a nice car and wearing a nice suit.
Hey.
And yep, he was driving a nice car.
You can ball hard, guys, in cell phone sales.
Yeah, who knows? I don't know anymore.
I think you still can if you want to hustle.
That's good. Well, that's the answer to everything. That's the answer to everything.
Right.
Well, I want to hustle and do something else.
Right.
But whatever. Somebody wants to do that.
You're still a hustler, just in different.
Just not in that arena.
Anymore.
Yeah. So Greg was a great guy, and we became pretty close.
Yeah. Yep. So Greg then gets a regional director position up here in Indiana, and then you and your family relocate to kind of follow his lead.
For sure.
And he brings you in as how did you start?
It was the market. Well, we opened the market.
You started as market recruiter.
So, and then
sales.
I didn't really work I really was not ever on the floor.
Right. Just to cast them all with good old.
That was in the early days.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That was in the early days, but mostly it was a full-time recruiting gig.
To recruit.
Yeah,
okay.
We needed to staff the state, and they were pretty aggressive in their growth. Yeah. So we had work to do,
and then I meet Jesse.
Yep.
I am gonna toot my own horn here. I was his number one recruit.
That's accurate.
Yeah, that is
number
accurate.
one recruit.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna fluff myself up here.
You should,
a little bit.
And you did, and you earned it.
We had fun. That was a great, probably like the last little bit of taste of Wolf of Wall Street you get in sales.
Oh boy,
Not quite. We definitely didn't make that much money.
I didn't have anything to do with that.
We made. No. But it was fun. We had a good time. I mean, I didn't have anything to do with that either, just to clarify.
Yeah. And I don't know if anybody had anything to do with it.
Well,
not sure. I have no idea.
I'm sure there are photos floating around, but we won't dive
None
into
that.
We aren't going to dive into that now. Anyway, so we meet at Cellular Sales. Yep. Cellular Sales did great things for all of us. I think we learned what we did not want to do, and we also made a good living, which was cool.
Yeah.
That gave. I'm not going to go into my story with that, but that gave me a leg up in life and broadened my scope a little bit. Gave me some exposure to life and what can 100%. Be done. It also taught me how to not drink Folgers coffee. And
you're welcome.
Thank you. My gut thanks you too, because that was breaking battery acid.
Right.
We did go to Starbucks for
travel.
Many
I brought that espresso machine.
That P card paid for so much Starbucks. Really, just so much coffee in general.
Because it needed to.
It definitely needed to.
It needed to.
We had to hype ourselves up.
Boosted morale, and it helped improve recruiting, and it helped ensure that we were able to get referral sources from our employees because they were happy.
Yeah, and then we learned how to drink better coffee and became even more pretentious.
There was a place great up in Fort Wayne.
Yeah, what was the place?
Found a good. Let's say it was Forza or Forta. Started with an F. It's right there on near the Hilton, across the street from the Hilton. But that was a great time. I mean, that was where the only thing I had forgotten at one time, an award I won. I think it showed up on my Google Photos when it lets you know.
That's right. What was it? Was the award?
It was the 2016 Sales Team Leader of the Year.
Oh,
right.
You were, I think, the only Sales Team Leader of the Year that year.
Oh
wait, no, you were one of you were one of 4.
Yep.
Yeah. It was you and.
It doesn't matter, but doesn't matter.
Yeah, all right,
yep.
Sure.
So, they didn't know that I was in the middle of talking to an Airforce recruiter.
Right. And you
and I had to do it that way.
You started that conversation
January of 16.
January 16, and then you ended up going to basic
July of 17.
Okay. And then I think I left. We won't go into all those hairy details, but I left about October, November. Yeah. So I left about 3 months after you, and then I think our friend Stacy left about 3 to 6 months after me, and then Greg was out about maybe 6 months to a year later. So it kind of we ended up moving on.
The glue didn't bind anymore, but
we had fun.
The one thing that I enjoyed the most, that I would take from, I mean, it was years, and it was a long time. It was like 9 years, 10 years there.
You spent 9, yeah,
I did.
Right.
I spent a long time there.
Jeez, you were there a really long time, almost a decade. Now that was a quarter of your life. It was
pretty incredible. A lot of experiences, and it was just wasn't.
It provided it did provide a great
time.
Yeah,
great people.
Great time.
Met great people. Had great. The pipeline that got you promoted was my crowning achievement.
That was a good pipeline. I mean, we both knew at the time that the person in charge was not going to promote me unless I proved myself. And then, I already had, but we just had to put the nail in the coffin, and that was the way to do it.
And it worked.
It did work. It worked very well.
And you earned it.
I did.
And because of that earning it, you probably took it more successfully.
Oh,
more serious than maybe you would have.
And I mean, Extreme Ownership was the first book we read in that pipeline. And we had to read these books in 7 days, write a report on them, and present.
Publicly deliver them.
Yeah. And that book is still sitting on my shelf. Yeah. And I tell people all the time, like that book probably was one of the top books that changed my view on on owning my own problems, owning my own life. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think 2015 was I want to say that's when I read that book.
Okay.
And then,
man, has that book been around for that long now?
It has.
7 years.
Yeah,
Jeez.
It's been around. Yep.
Yeah.
And then everybody likes the last chapter, and that's what it was all about: discipline equals freedom, and how that relates even to a sales organization. And nobody's doing it better than Jocko is as far as that. But
he's crushing it. Shout out to Jocko. I got your boots on right now.
Yeah.
And we're drinking your drink right now. Let's go.
We love him.
Maybe one day we'll get to talk to Jocko.
Maybe.
He's pretty up there now.
He's been up now for 12 hours.
On a Saturday, 4:30
It's 15:21. So I think that was a really helpful part of even my development, because that's where I give them credit. They did trust me to put something together that I don't think that they kept.
Yeah.
And nor did they have before that. Mm-hmm. But they loved it when it was put together, and the whole idea of developing leadership. And the crazy thing was, I got the entire thought process from it from the military.
Yeah.
The way that the military runs a pipeline is exactly how I put that leadership pipeline together.
Right.
And
then lo and behold, a year later, you're in the military.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was like the beauty of it was taking this thing that I was researching and trying to figure out, and coming to a place where I was confident enough to tell my father, I don't want to be promoted within this company. Mm-hmm. And if I don't want to be promoted within this company, then I don't know if I should stay there.
Right.
And if I leave that company, I'm not leaving to go to another company that I'm not interested in being a part of. Mm-hmm. I want to do what I believe I should be doing.
Right.
And and that was part of that, was it gave me the confidence to tell my father, I have achieved enough where I still want to do this. Because there were calls along the way. I called the Coast Guard in 2000.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
I remember talking about
5 years before. So I had called the Coast Guard in 2011 or 2012.
Okay.
And the recruiter hung up on me. He was not interested in a potential rescue swimmer. I had argued with my dad the morning before a triathlon in Dunedin, Florida, about joining. Mm-hmm. And so that was 23, 28. It was like 17, 23, 28. There were like these 5-year increments where I was like, why am I not doing this thing that I think I'm better fit for?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
you were built for that.
It was where I belonged. Similar, like I could just tell. Yeah. It was, it was just where I wanted to be with those people.
Right.
And there's people in the military that that maybe aren't whatever somebody imagines, and there's people that are way cooler than anybody could ever imagine.
Yeah.
But I knew that being a part of that meant something to me, service. So I did, and then that was a difficult thing for the family. That was a difficult thing for my father. He asked me if there was. Well, I told him I swore in.
Yeah.
I had sworn in. He said, so this means I can't talk you out of that. I was like,
too late.
No, I swore in on purpose before we talked.
Well, it was a sacrifice for your kids, sacrifice for you. Yeah. And sometimes service does call for that,
Yeah, it usually will, of some degree. I mean,
well, and we won't go into the details of all that time frame, but just, I'm curious as to your thoughts on this. There was a lot going on at that point. And was that for you? Was that kind of an escape for that, or do you think, like, I mean, I know you were called to this to begin with, so I'm not trying to say that's what it was solely, but like, do you feel like that was part of it in jumping in at that point, or do you think it was just the timing?
Timing was interesting because I ruptured my bicep in October of 15. January of 16 is when I first contacted the military. Okay. And things didn't start to change within the homestead until December of 16. Okay. So I had been in the process for 12 months. The only reason why I delayed going in was we did an overseas trip as a family, and
Portugal, right?
Ireland.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
Ireland.
Cool.
And I had I was training to go in, and I was on a run. And there were 2 reasons why I delayed. I injured.
Isn't that when you rolled your ankle coming down a step or something?
No, I badly damaged my knee.
Oh,
on this run. It was a beautiful setting. Literally. Next stop, New York.
Yeah.
From Ireland. So I'm running on the coast, and a wave came in. It was horrible. It was a bad thing. I was 5 miles out, so I had to run 5 miles back, and my knee was pretty well jacked. And I knew that something bad had happened.
Yeah.
But that was like part of it. I contacted the recruiter. I'm like, hey, listen, I just had this thing happen. I'm gonna hold for a minute. But then I was promoted to the whatever they called it, GM-ish role before we had promoted somebody else. So that was like how other team leads were getting promoted. Right. Then I was going over that. Mm-hmm. And then myself and one other guy were going to be in that role, splitting the state. One other guy. And then
another time.
Yeah, for sure. So that happened, and I wasn't sure because that was a nice promotion. I mean, they paid well for that role.
Okay.
And I wasn't sure, why am I getting promoted? I took 2 teams to top 3.
Yeah.
In the country, and now I'm getting promoted, and I'm on the verge of swearing in.
Right.
So what am I missing? Where's God? Is God leading me someplace here? And I told the recruiter, I'm like, hey, listen, seriously, I need like 3 months to figure out my life.
Yeah.
Because of most people don't do better when they're on their way out.
Right.
And that was like a character aspect. I wanted to do well.
Yeah.
I did not want anybody to ever say, well, Jesse didn't finish strong. Mm-hmm. And that was really important to me.
Yeah.
So I had that incident on the run, and then I was promoted. By September of 16, I knew that I couldn't stay.
Yeah.
I would actually argue that there's a chance that all the things that occurred post that probably delayed entry more than facilitated the going into the military. So I would say that they were more of a distraction, really.
Okay.
Now they did end up being a blessing to this was a great time to go and to be able to clear the head and just work on, just have very challenging, physically demanding tasks in front of me. That did end up being a monster blessing for sure, but there were some difficulties there.
I've seen a difference in your personality with that as well. Like I'm not going to say you've gotten soft, but you softened up maybe a little bit.
No, that's me.
Rounded the edges just a hair.
There are people right now that are going to listen to that and say,
completely disagree.
What would that have looked like if you...
Yeah. But I mean, seeing you come back from that time being gone, I mean, because you didn't get to see your kids a ton over that time because it was 2 years of training.
Yep.
Or pretty close to it.
Yep. I mean, July of 17 until graduating from the pipeline in December of 18.
And just clarify which pipeline.
Yeah, so SERE, Specialist Pipeline for the United States Air Force, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. In most branches, they do not have SERE as a dedicated career field.
Right.
So they're a special duty. So somebody will be a maintainer or some other job, some other MOS in another.
Aren't they usually like that type of position is usually contracted? Right.
They have a lot of contractors, and we do too, mainly because we can't fill the billets. Okay. But the spots that are necessary.
Oh, for the amount of SERE specialists you need.
Right.
Really?
So that's been a hard charge that the military's had lately.
Is that consistent across the military of just filling positions, or are there more positions that have that?
Well, so you have special warfare. A SERE specialist is an enabler of special warfare.
Okay.
So through our training, it enables their training.
Right.
Special warfare is definitely always having difficult time in without talking too far outside of my area of expertise. They have a hard time both getting the recruits. I mean, I think very well-known people have probably talked a lot about that. Hard time getting the recruits, and then they have to get through their pipeline, and their pipeline is demanding.
It is demanding, yeah. And most people are not physically up to the challenge.
They're not. I mean, there's definitely a difficulty. We see where I work is where a lot of those people train for the Air Force, and you definitely see the disparity. In the different career fields.
What's the difference between special warfare and special operations? Or is there a difference? Is it the same thing?
The Air Force calls it special warfare.
Okay.
I would say the biggest differences are that people call special forces.
Yeah.
All special forces, and really special forces is just the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the special operation community. And then you have those who support them, and that's really ultimately like a series. There's other support roles, but that's where we fall in. If anybody's read any of the books, that have been written, most people talk about SERE School. They talk about their experience in SERE, and it's a rewarding job specifically in the Air Force because it is your entire focus. Your entire focus is whatever deals with personal recovery. So their worst day is what we're trying to help prepare them for. Okay. And it's not just special warfare that goes to SERE in the Air Force. Pilots go, linguists can go, people who need that training that run that at risk of isolation event, they will go to our training and receive what they need to at least have the confidence that they know how to handle themselves. And so you guys go through
all that type of training times 10, really.
Yeah, that's the best part about the pipeline. I mean, it's a gem because you do get that opportunity to train in different biomes, all the biomes. You have the opportunity to learn what it's like to experience what that person that is at risk of isolation.
And what are the different biomes?
So you're going to have tropics. You're going to have
which would be
open ocean.
Like where? Where do they put that?
Well, I mean, just think of any tropical environment.
Environment.
I mean, Ecuador has a tropical environment.
Sure.
The rainforest is a tropical environment, right?
Okay.
You're going to have where we do it doesn't really matter, but any open ocean is going to be a biome.
Okay.
You're going to have your desert biome, right? Your temperate environment, right? So you get to train in those different environments, and you have to learn how to procure water. You have to learn how to procure food. You have to learn how to cook that food and prepare that food, and you have to learn what's edible and what isn't edible, right? Because that's big time. Yeah. Then you have to learn how to initiate some sort of recovery because it's all about the military. So it's always about recovery. If they're having a bad day like
you're
that,
essentially a paid mountain man.
They want to go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we get to do, and that's the best part about the training. I mean, you get to spend most of your, depending on where you are,
right,
where your job is, you get to spend a lot of your time
in the woods.
Being outside. Yeah. And that's a pretty cool gig. It's surprising. I mean, not a lot of people are aware of that option. I think my recruiter thought that you had to have had experience in the Air Force before you could go do it, instead of just be able to go right on in.
Your recruiter thought?
My recruiter didn't know, for sure. Which is,
but you can go directly in.
You go directly in,
and
to the pipeline.
Is that's how it is for almost all special operations now. You just have to qualify through the ASVAB, right? And then
you qualify through the ASVAB, and then you also have to take a fitness test.
Okay, and if you pass that, then you can go into
you
basic
can get a contract.
And selection, right?
Right.
Okay.
Of some kind.
And then you have to make it through that.
For sure.
Which is where you would go to BUDS. It's probably going to be the one.
If you were in the Navy.
Right, that everybody's
going to be comfortable with that.
Yeah. Do they call your guys' school anything specific?
So I'm a cadre member at our, they don't call it, it's a SERE Specialist Training Orientation course, and I'm a cadre member there.
Yeah.
And then
that's why he has a mustache, guys.
It's obligatory. And it's there's a famous pilot photo, but we're not pilots, so it doesn't matter. We're like the opposite of the pilot in the Air Force. We're the less intelligent members of the Air Force. But
don't talk down about yourself.
It's comforting to know that there's people significantly more intelligent than myself out there doing really cool stuff.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yep. So there, but every pipeline will have its own name, its own thing, and it'll be run, by a very strict syllabus. I mean, nobody goes rogue. Like there's no like rogue aspects of it. You have a requirement, and you meet that requirement as cadre, and then the candidates have to meet that requirement also, and they're graded and pushed. And they don't really, you never feel like it's like that as a person going through, but that's the fact of it.
Yeah. What was the most challenging part of that for you getting through?
Well, navigation phase was where I was super unhappy. You carry 80 to 100 pound ruck for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
I think we covered 50 miles. And you are doing navigation during that time. So you're doing point to point navigation. You're doing terrain eval. You're using celestial age. You're doing night navigation. You're living out of your pack. And you're covering, I mean, we're in a mountainous region. So you're covering not only a lot of distance, but you're also covering a lot of elevation gain. And that's not, some people are great with that. They're like built to have a pack on their back. And I love those people and I hate them at the same time because I'm not one of them.
You don't think you're like that?
I'm not like that compared to some of the humans. There's just a a monster difference between like the people that are very comfortable with their pack on.
There's oxes and then there's gazelles. Right?
That's right. That's right. And it's an impressive feat when you see a dude get after it with that pack on, and you're like, that's a big human. And that was probably the toughest phase. But I mean, because of the technical aspect of it, we do a search and rescue, or we call it rocks phase. And I mean, you're learning, a variation of rock climbing mixed with locating an isolated person and then recovering them with some sort of angles. Yeah. And you have certain knots that you have to tie so that the person's strapped in and safe. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's a high technical aspect to that. Yeah. Which is not just, hey, climb up that rock and go find somebody and carry them down. I mean, there's a lot. What if they're injured? There's a lot that goes into it. What if they're going to be, how are they going to be evacuated? You have to take a lot of that into account, and that's very technical for someone who's going through training. So you can't sleep on the mental aspect. It's not like that, and that's something that a lot of candidates will say they were surprised by the mental aspect that was required
for SERE
to get through. Not that you have to be a genius, of course, but that you just have to be dialed in. There's not a lot of times
fortitude.
Right. Fortitude. You have to be dialed in to. You can't just shut up and color sometimes, or you can't just eat crayons. I mean, you have to be focused, because the cadre are going to teach you something that you've never seen before, and then they're going to have you do that, and then that's a graded item. It's going to be really quick, and you need to know how to pick it up, and that takes focus. That isn't just being able to run really fast or being able to ruck up that mountain or be able to lift a lot of weight. Yeah,
you got to learn, implement.
You have to, and it's all super practical. You're going to use the vast majority of it, depending at some time in your career potentially. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And so you're training people. Well, you were training people doing that in the mountains. Yep. Now you're cadre, so that's the selection school.
It's part of the orientation course, just to use the proper terminology, and that's where the candidates will come in from basic training, or they'll cross train, and they will have that opportunity to see if SERE's for them. It's it's like a job interview. They get to see if they're a good fit for us, and if we're a good fit for them, and go through. I can't really get into the details of what the course looks like, but they'll have that opportunity over 15 days to be evaluated, work hard. They'll get to work harder than they've ever worked in their life. Yeah, which oftentimes I will say to them, no matter what happens, nobody can take that from you. You know that you
still put the work in.
You put the work in. You learn skills that you probably have never learned, and they will stay with you. And
what's the attrition rate?
So it varies anywhere between 50 to. I mean, my class we started with 33 candidates in my class. They graduated 4 in the course. And then that
But you started with 50 and graduated 4.
We started with 33.
33, okay.
I was an iteration, a final iteration in the course before it started. It had a downtime, and then they started a new one.
And how much older were you
than the other? I think I was about 10 years probably their senior.
Really?
Yep.
The next.
I think the next person down was maybe 23.
Okay.
And I mean, joke's on me. I was the team lead. We were all low ranking. There were no cross trains, so nobody came over from another job that wanted to be
It's funny how you never want to be in leadership yet. Just kind of seemingly happens.
That was horrible. No, they picked me because of team, and there's an individual that's out there.
They think as their elder, he will make wise choices.
Right, and they said
they made the wrong choice.
They pulled me aside, and it was a beautiful learning experience for me. It was humbling. They said, "You are Airman Pimental. You're the worst leader that we have ever had." And I was like, "Okay, that hurts. That stings." But I didn't know. I mean, this, you go from like leadership in a private sector to leadership in the military, and it's a completely different ask. It's a different expectation.
How would you just explain that?
There is zero rationalizing. There is no excuse.
In the military,
right? Yep. Certainly at that time in training, nobody cares about why it didn't work out.
They just care that it didn't work out.
It didn't work out. You were not where you were supposed to be in time. You were not. You were late, and late is a fixed that is a fixed time.
Mm-hmm.
If you're told to be somewhere at 06:30, then you're there, and not only there, you're not finishing at 06:30. You're standing in formation, ready to rock.
Right.
And I knowingly, first of all, I was in charge of like these young bucks that were like, they weren't getting out of bed on time, and I was responsible for just trying to get people out of bed, which that wasn't my strength for sure. I didn't understand why I even had to wait for them. But then
there's a reason
team.
you didn't fit in very well in the general public.
So I ended up trying to figure it out there, and they were like, "Are you having a hard time leading some of these young?" And I did. That mixed with it was like an odd way to say a dream come true. I got to go do something I had always wanted to do, but at the same time, I didn't know at all what I was doing. Yeah. I really didn't. I mean, military has customs and courtesies. There's a level of professionalism that you have to maintain. As an older person, you have some habits, you have some ways about you, especially if you had come, I had come from some level of a moderate level of success. Yeah. So going to parade rest when you're talking to somebody in leadership, like that,
they don't care about what you did in your
right. They do not
life,
care.
Yeah.
They're not asking. They're not impressed. That person is of a higher rank, and I need to be standing at parade rest, and I'm like standing there with my hands at my sides, not even realizing how disrespectful I was.
How old was your cadre when you?
They're some of them were definitely younger than me.
Was that hard to chew on?
No, it wasn't, because I was happy to be there. Yeah. I mean, I truly was happy to be there, hearing that I didn't at any time think about their age.
You just thought about their rank.
I looked at their age like military age.
Okay.
They had done things that I hadn't done. Right. They had experiences I had not experienced. And I was kind of, frankly, I was like, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to have that opportunity to learn from them.
Do you think you would have had the same experience if you had joined, let's say, at 19 years old?
I don't know if I would have made it at 19. I'm just not sure if I had the discipline. I would have been more thrust and no vector. I mean, it was tough to. It would have taken some chilling out.
Well, I feel like it's an appreciation for the sacrifice going in. Like you can realize, okay, I'm going in because I'm choosing to, not because I have to.
And I didn't have to then. I mean, the difference would have been, it just would have depended on where. I would not have gone into the Air Force at 19 though, and that's something. Yeah, you would have. I would have gone into another arena. I'm not entirely sure what I would have done, but it would have been. I mean, that was one of the issues. How I could. I mean, what our job is wrapped around recovery.
Right. You would have probably gone more combat.
That was where my nature wants that, but that doesn't. I would not. I answered to my father at that time. So and that would have been a tough one. Yeah. To swallow. The nice thing about being a SERE guy is everything is about recovery of someone that needs to happen, and that's what you're working towards. So it.
Would you say that
it's not a door kicker?
Having kids, do you think that is more of a this may be the wrong way to put it, but more of a family man position in that?
I mean, you have different options that are available to to SERE guys. Okay. They can, the sky's the limit for them. What they would like to do. It definitely is. I mean, my own personal experience has been. I couldn't be any more thankful for the amount of time I've been able to spend with my family, even not living in the same where state, they are. Right. It's been a blessing. It's been a blessing to be able to, basically achieve 80 or 90% of my goals there, and not have missed a lot. I can't speak for everybody though.
Do you have any regrets in life?
Well, I mean, the cliche answer, I guess, would be that I don't have any regrets. I've grown from all of them, but I definitely think I would have done some things differently. I would have been. I mean, I'm raising my kids to appreciate academics more, and to be buckled down there. I wish that I would have done that.
Earlier on.
I for sure, yeah, because now I feel like I'm spending my entire life, my adult life now, making up for those decisions to some degree. So I would definitely, if I could go back and, have put a letter under my 14-year-old Jesse's bed, like, hey, man.
Well, first of all, you probably wouldn't want to look under the bed.
May not have wanted to look under the bed. I don't know if you could have seen under the bed, but if he found the letter, I would have encouraged less worrying about what he was worried about. Girls' parties.
Sure.
I was not in any way considerate with the faith. So all those distractions, I would have encouraged. Hey, that stuff needs to be tabled, and this is your one time that you're going to get to buckle down and really set some great habits.
Mm-hmm.
So I really work with my kids on that.
Yeah.
Really work with that.
So we've mentioned faith a few times now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When did you figure that out, find that, when did you find a relationship with the Lord? And then I guess how has that impacted, your life going forward?
Impacts everything. Has impacted everything. And I haven't done it perfectly. I haven't done it right, but whatever that means.
Yeah.
But my dad. So when I went with my dad, he had a library,
mm-hmm.
and that was the first time I ever was interested in like just grabbing a book off of a shelf. And I read this book by F. LaGard Smith.
What was the first book you read?
That was the first book. F. LaGard Smith. F. LaGard Smith. He was a professor at Pepperdine. I think I'm getting his name. Is 22 years ago.
Guess we'll find out.
He wrote a book called The Devil's Advocate, and it was on the ACLU.
Okay.
And I'm not, for other reasons, I'm not going to dive too deeply into that.
Okay.
But that was an interesting read as a young buck, and that really got me interested in politics.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that was like, okay, well, that spurred some interest.
Yeah.
And then from there, I ended up reading somehow,
mm-hmm.
grabbed another book called What's in the Bible by R.C. Sproul. R.C. Sproul. Yep.
R.C.
Yep. So great. And he ended up being one of those silent mentors.
Yeah.
And I read as many books from him as I could. But he made the Bible come alive in a way that just reading through the first 10 books of the Bible was kind of rough. Maybe the first couple aren't that bad, and then
there's a lot of
off.
going
Leviticus,
through the
Numbers,
and,
Deuteronomy. Things get a little tough.
Sure.
So that book really helped.
Mm-hmm.
Really helped me kind of get through those.
What was that book called?
What's in the Bible?
What's in the Bible?
And RC had this amazing personality. He had this gift. He was funny
mm-hmm.
in his writing.
Yeah.
And I thought for sure that was the co-writer. Right. There was a co-writer in that book, and Robert somebody, I can't remember his last name.
Mm-hmm.
But that co-writer, I thought that RC was funny because of him, but it was actually RC's funny.
Yeah.
And then he ended up being my pastor for a few years at St. Andrew's Chapel.
St. Andrew's Chapel is where he was a pastor
in Sanford, Florida. Yep. Okay. And then now they've grown tremendously. Okay. They have Reformation Bible College, and it's a huge blessing for anybody that gets to go there. And Ligoniers, not far from there. And that became kind of my the source of the growth in my faith. And then, but my dad, ultimately, I could go to him with, we would just go and get dessert at 11 o'clock at night from local steakhouse, and we would just talk theology. And he always, everywhere he ever went, he talked.
Has your dad always been a believer?
He grew up in the church. Yeah. He grew up I believe his family was Southern Baptist. Okay. Mother was a strong influence there. Mm-hmm. And then he probably, I believe he had some time where he wrestled with the answers that the church could give to some tough questions in science. Mm-hmm. And he went his own way for a period of time.
Who was the guy that we knew that answered those science questions? Lance Cooper. Was it Judah?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Judah was his name.
Yeah, Judah.
Hey, shout out Judah.
Yeah, for sure.
And Lance Cooper.
Yep.
Lance Cooper's
we love
cabin.
Lance.
We love Lance.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
I text him all the time.
I need to have him on.
You do. I text him all the time.
All right, we're gonna set that up.
Mm-hmm. That'd be a really good idea.
Yeah,
we got to do it down there.
We'd have to go down there. Do it in the cabin.
On the cabin.
On the river.
Yeah.
Man, all right, we're gonna
do a little
doing a road trip.
Wintertime jump in.
I'm down. Question is, will you jump? Because Stacy bailed on us.
I jumped. Of course I jumped.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
I'm pretty sure I was the first one.
I felt a part of me go into my stomach.
You guys came in after I did.
Hey, I got in.
You did.
And that water was cold.
It was cold.
That was cold. But very refreshing. We'll go into cold plunges
another time. Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that got that going, and that got the faith going, and then strengthened throughout the years, and then probably some of the normal C.S. Lewis. I just read The Great Divorce with my 15-year-old, and that was a great read. But it's I would argue that it's foundational to everything that we do
The Bible.
at the house. Bible, faith.
Yeah.
Yep.
As it should be.
Using the other, the Lord's blessed other, a lot of people with truth. Typically will go through something on my drives. So right now I'm going through a course on St. Thomas Aquinas, which from what I heard from a local Catholic friend, today is St. Thomas Aquinas Day.
Huh.
Yep.
Who's your local Catholic friend?
One of the psychs down in psychologist in so by local I mean San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the psych for us, and
we're in Indiana, so local would mean Indiana, but it's fine.
Yep. I'm not sure.
Semantics.
Yeah.
Semantics.
Geography is a tough thing.
Yeah.
So, yep. So that's the faith, and it plays a pivotal role. I just had opportunity to give like a mentor session, and you talk about some of the key tenets, those 4 cardinal virtues we talk about, and what does that mean?
Ooh.
Boom. And we're back. 4 cardinal virtues.
4 cardinal virtues.
All right. Temperance, prudence, justice, and fortitude. Yep. Those are the 4.
Temperance, prudence, justice, and fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I know we don't have time today to go into all of that, but just like give a little brief
overview
of the 4 cardinal virtues.
Yeah. So one, I'd say I was introduced haphazardly unintentionally by Dan Crenshaw's book, Fortitude, which is really good. I believe it came out in March 2020, which was a fascinating time in this country for a book called Fortitude to come out. But it allowed for me to I picked up long distance running thanks to COVID because that was the only thing that was available other than work.
And that's all you do. And lift a little bit of weights.
Lift a little bit.
Weights.
We'll see. Okay. Coming for you. So,
welcome.
Fortitude. Darren Crenshaw wrote that book, and it was incredible. Chapter 3, No Plan B. So I've had my boys read that book, and it's been fascinating listening to them as they're engaged in their difficulties and their athletics or academics, and they're like, I was like, what are you thinking about out there on the mat? And my middle boy was like, no plan B, Dad. And no plan B. And it's been that was an incredible read, but I didn't really know that fortitude was a cardinal virtue. Mm-hmm. And so I just started, kind of Googling what's going on out there in the world of fortitude. And outside of, because Crenshaw's story is phenomenal, and people should read the book. It's a beautiful read. I've bought it for multiple people.
Would you say it's a political book or more of just a book about life?
It's it's just more of a book about life. It's not really. It's about how has he demonstrated fortitude, and how should we as individuals demonstrate fortitude, and how can our culture get some fortitude? Mm-hmm. How could we not be so sensitive? How could we push through difficult topics? Right. How can we, one of the chapters is like sweat the small stuff, and it's like, how can you handle the difficulties that life has on a small scale, and let that stuff work in you, but don't get wrapped around the axle over foolishness.
Well, and a true sign of wisdom is being able to listen to people that you don't necessarily agree with.
And that's where prudence would come in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's where prudence would come in, because
cardinal virtue.
Yeah, without prudence, prudence does not exist if the other 3 don't exist. So it's kind of a fascinating philosophical component where prudence is the proper application of wisdom. Okay? So there has to be this objective standard. There has to be this idea that exists that says we know that there is something that is good, and we know that there is something that is right. Prudence gives us that opportunity to go the right way. But you have to accept some things first to have prudence. And you can't have prudence in a vacuum. It can't just exist on its own.
Okay.
Right? You have to have these other awesome components that are going into it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's where that proper application of that wisdom comes in. And that's, so the way that Crenshaw writes that book definitely leans on the necessity for prudence.
Mm-hmm.
Is it prudent, right? We don't really talk like that either anymore. Like I don't have a lot of conversations with folks where we're like, hey, I just want to make the prudent decision.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, well, I just care about how I feel or care about how it looks. Right? Well, but is it prudent? Is it wise?
Right.
Have I evaluated all of the criteria that could go into this decision and then made a prudent decision? Or have I just blown with the wind?
Yeah.
So that's where prudence comes into play. And it can be imprudent to make a decision that you really want to make. We do that kind of often.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I wouldn't be
Human
here to
nature.
Yeah, it is. But that's where and studying philosophy is a beautiful aspect of kind of opening your eyes to, or all of our eyes, really. Because people can it could be prudent for one and not necessarily prudent for the other, depending on a bunch of other factors. So,
well, I think a cool point you made when I told you I was going to start studying a little bit more Stoic philosophy was who is the most wise philosopher of them all. Mm-hmm. And
well, St. Thomas Aquinas would say Aristotle, but
sure. But we're gonna go down a different rabbit hole of Jesus now.
Jesus, right?
Not everybody may agree with that, and that's okay.
Okay, right.
But that's our view.
And Stoicism plays its role, but it's just empty.
Stoicism is very empty. If you don't connect it with a spiritual sense of some sort, whatever that may be, it's gonna be very empty.
Right. So my wife is reading. She's doing some grad work at Biola University, and she's studying metaphysics.
His wife's very intelligent, definitely more intelligent than both of us.
100% accurate. And she is dealing with Stoicism within Christianity, and there are times where some within the Christian faith would argue that Paul was practicing Stoicism in his writings, and I don't personally find that to be true, because the way that I understand Stoicism. Well, first of all, I have an issue with like some of their founding. Like Seneca is somebody that people go to often for Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius is somebody that people go to for Stoicism. Neither one of these individuals lived. They forced themselves to live in an environment that lacked.
Right.
But they themselves did not lack anything on their own. So
what do you mean by that?
Well, they were wealthy. They were doing well.
So
Seneca's family was doing quite well. Marcus Aurelius is an emperor.
It's very easy to live minimalistically when you don't have to worry about providing for yourself.
Right. They're imposing it upon themselves. And then Seneca specifically is talking about, kind of the riches that come from the mental riches that come from. And I don't really see that as really helpful to those who actually
are trying to maybe get by.
Now, right. And there is I think it's called the Stockdale course, which was created by a POW who went on to include Stoicism in there, in the actual, like what it is to be a POW. And so some people have leaned on the meditations of Marcus Aurelius to help within that confine, to help within that environment of a POW. And it was like a toolkit of sorts that they could draw on when you have nothing else.
Well, and the reason for that is, you set goals that then fail, you become discouraged.
Okay, right.
That's the primary reason.
Well, and that's where, and I would argue that's where fortitude would come in. So that's where it would be interesting to probably hash that out more, but to keep it within the realm of the virtues. Yeah, for sure. The idea of prudence being the right thing, and then having the fortitude to press, right? So you've chosen this path, but it's not necessarily going to be laid out perfectly, and you're going to have some obstacles. You're going to have that fortitude. And there's other books I think you have, one of the books that we had to read in that leadership pipeline was The Obstacle is the Way.
Oh, that's a great book. And I need to go back and read that again.
Right. So that was that's like an example of demonstrating that fortitude. Don't get wrapped around the axle. Demonstrate fortitude. Push through. and that has a lot of value in entrepreneurial life. It has a lot of value in a military setting.
Ryan Holiday also has a book called Daily Stoic, which I've got it right over there. I have found that reading that along, like after I do my devotional for the day, right, or read a chapter in the Bible, it's so interesting how so many times, 50% of the time, whatever Stoic I read that day ends up like tying right into what I read in the Bible. And again, not everybody believes in that, and that's fine. But whatever that may be for somebody.
For sure. All truth is God's truth. I mean, if there is truth to be found, then it is from a divine source, and that's because we can't. Truth can't necessarily exist. Like, how does one define truth?
Well, obviously, truth does not exist for humans, because if it did,
right.
I don't know if I'm going to go down that rabbit hole just yet.
So we have to be careful.
Maybe 2 or 3 episodes now.
But and then you get into the justice and temperance, right? And justice is such a fascinating, because we really live more in a world that operates not with justice as its key principle. Most of us live something where grace is found more often, at least certainly in personal dealings.
You're saying there's more grace than justice in personal
I think that none of us ever want to hang out with somebody that's 100% justice oriented. We're not going to be really close friends, because you're going to make them. We're all going
to screw up,
right? And then that person's going to hold you accountable perfectly, and that's where like when you look at the faith, that's why justice is such an important one, because it's the lack of justice by a heavenly Father.
There's only judgment from one, or there can be there can only be judgment from one, because that's the only being that's perfect.
Yeah, and then you're correct, and that's how some philosophers have found that there must be a creator, there must be a divine entity, there must be this first mover, this person that exists outside of, because we do have this idea of justice. Where does that come from? And that's
people would say that's I want to say moral law, but I don't think that's it. There's
natural law.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's things that appear to be right, and we all know that's that when you go against that, you have gone against something natural. It exists outside of us, and that's a beautiful thing. The final one is temperance. And I like to refer to Jefferson on that, because he was famous for having never overconsumed wine or food in front of any guests, and he could have, but that was a demonstration of his temperance, his ability to temper himself, his personality, his attitude, his anger, which there doesn't seem to be an indication that he suffered from that stuff. From some of those character
probably
traits.
because he had temperance around people.
Right, he did,
so
where John Adams, if we're talking about like the founding fathers of our country, John Adams was like this wild northeastern guy, Massachusetts, who seemed to be a little bit more aggressive. Like the French didn't want him involved because of his lack of temperance in any diplomatic dealings, but they loved Jefferson. They loved the way he dealt with himself. So there's like those 4 cardinal virtues. The Catholics have done a great job at helping bring those to us. The Protestants I haven't found a lot of arenas where that conversation is had. But it's definitely a worthy one.
Yeah. Interesting.
Especially with your children, especially amongst ourselves.
Right.
I mean, if we studied those virtues as a culture, we'd probably be a little better off.
Yeah, I would say much better off than where we're at now. And I, that could digress into the conversation here of parenting and being intentional with your family, and even if those are not your beliefs, the 4 cardinal virtues, which I'd be hard pressed to say that anybody couldn't agree with those. Being intentional with what you do believe in and passing that down, not just.
And I would argue that this is where it's like super important, because Hitler was intentional about what he believed. So
good comparison there.
It's one of those things where we sometimes say we value someone because, well, you at least he did what he believed, right? And then other times we're like, well, we'd rather some people not do what they believe. And in that case, we would have preferred, it would have been morally right for him to go against his belief.
Right.
Right. And that's where a great conversation can be had, because why should that person not do that? And then some people would just be like, well, that's so dumb. That's so obvious. Well, I mean, an entire country decided that they should execute these values, and they had allies.
Somehow.
Right.
Right.
So there's a lot
of
some of these things may not be, we think that they're so obvious, but they really weren't so obvious. And is it because they lost sight of this absolutism, this genuine absolutism that comes from outside of us?
Well, and then you have to wonder if part of the reason that this isn't being encouraged more by, the powers that be in our country is because when you have people that are more intentional, they typically do stand behind their beliefs more, and then they stand up for what they believe in and prevent tyranny,
Right. And we've been protected to this point. We have some great documents that have that I know I certainly support the country because I want to be a part of upholding those values that were passed down for 250 years. We have a system that has allowed for a lot of greatness. We have the highest level of immigration of any country in the world because people want to come and be a part of what makes the United States awesome. And part of what makes it a great place is not only just its openness, but its rule of law. It is, and what that means to people is that they can trust that they have a sound system, as though it may not be perfect, as sound as it can be. Within a failed, right? This is the thing, we're all looking for like a utopia. Plato wrote about a utopia.
Yeah. Certain things work in a utopian environment. Socialism works in a utopian environment.
Well, it has to be utopian to be so.
That's the only way for it to work, right?
It's not going to work in here. It's not going to work. It hasn't worked. But every good socialist will tell you the reason why it hasn't worked is because it hasn't been done right.
Right. But why isn't it done right? Because we don't live in a perfect world.
Yeah, because we have humans running that institution. Right. It's like church, right? You find a perfect church, don't go because you're going to mess it up. So it's the same kind of thing. You're not going to find the perfect
That's
church.
Great. That's great. Yeah. Where do I want to take this conversation next? Because that I could lay down so many different avenues. So, what would you say motivates you in life?
No, that's so the motivators are family, and I want to live an intentional life that I have. I always look back, so that motivates me. So I always look back. So I think about when that moment before I die, what am I going to think about what I've done? Right. And am I going to be proud in that moment? And I really try to live for that moment. I try to live so that the moment before I die, I know that I have given it all that I have at then.
Do you think with your kind of personality, though, you'll ever be able to be proud when you die?
Yeah, because I think about how much I put out, and what I mean by put out is like, other people put out more than I do, right? They may have more horsepower, mentally, physically. Those people exist, and so I don't compare myself to them, but I compare myself to me, and I know what I need to be doing to ensure that I'm maximizing my horsepower. And at certain times, there have been times, the moment before you jump out of an airplane, you do have, I would argue that most of us who have done that say, well, if that chute doesn't open, have I done to this point my best? I mean, that so you have to analyze that. And I've talked to my kids about not that, but I've talked to them about if I were to go today, I believe that I have trained them up in the best way that I could, and that I have left them with all that I have to give them to this point. Some people may be critical of that, but I have more to give, more to grow, more, as I develop in this life, and then I'll share. And of course, they have a fallen. At 39, I probably will look back on 39-year-old Jesse and have some choice words for the arrogance. And
I think we all. I don't think if we're doing what we should be doing in life, which is growing, then I don't think we look back 10 years from now and go, oh yeah, no, I was on point. I think it's,
on everything. There were some things that I was on point on.
Sure.
But man, I really got that one, and that's a blind sight for me that I wish I didn't have. But as far as the children go, I typically believe that I will have that when it's time.
Yeah.
I will have exhausted, and I think that if the kids were around, they'd be like, yeah, Dad definitely gives us all that we got.
Sure. Yeah.
Why is he having me? Because the question is always, why on top of all my schoolwork do I also have to listen to this? Do I also have to read that? Do I have to write that? And
they're going to school, but you're unschooling them.
Right, at the same time. Poor kids are really confused. So on Sundays, we have these talks, we have these aggressive, sometimes tension-filled talk because they don't want to, but I don't know how else to give them. I don't want a day to go to waste. I really have a high value on that. But
especially in the position you're in, you're not seeing them every day. And I think that allows you to be really intentional. Well, I guess it could allow for a lot of unintentionality. Is that a word?
Well, you see a lot of people that are, there's a lot of individuals that are in maybe my shoes that it's harder to push when you're not around all the time than it is when you're around all the time, because you want to be comforted. You want them to want to be with you. You want them to want to hang with you. You want them to they want them to enjoy that time. And you're concerned that if you push them, though you're not around.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you're around all the time too, on the flip side of that, you can get too complacent with not being intentional. But at the same point, when you are around all the time, you can't be on them 24/7, right? Like you do have to give them, what am I trying to say here? Like positive reinforcement, right? But set boundaries, teach them how to be disciplined themselves and seek out more. And, I see my kids day to day, and not that they're perfect by any means, just like I'm not, but, I feel like you see that when you're around other people and other people's children. You can see like, okay, I may be doing something right. Well, God's doing something right, because I definitely am not always. But
and then you have I've learned from them, and I've also I always joke that I try to steal. I steal from other people. I steal what they're doing really well.
Yeah.
I steal from men that I find admirable, that I look at.
That's what makes successful people successful, though. You steal from others and make it your own,
and then hope that you're doing that for someone else.
By the way, we're not talking about stealing property. Just to clarify, we're talking about stealing ideas and
character and
experiences that they've already had that you can learn from. You can learn from before somebody else, or you can learn from those who have gone before you.
I walked into somebody's house today and I talked to them for a few minutes. I left and I said, they probably run a significantly better budget than we do, and we should probably copy. We need to copy whatever budgeting they're doing. Like we should steal from that.
About that,
right?
Get his ideas on that one. He's got some really good ones.
I'm sure
he puts me to shame.
Right?
You know how much of a stickler I can be on finance.
Yeah,
there you go.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's like a classic example. I always hesitate I do try to hesitate with the negative, because there are so many people that are doing it. They're doing really well. I look at their children and and you only know so much. That's the other thing. We only know so much about what's really going on, but that perception of some families and some children that have come from the families, it can be really good. And I can learn from that. I ask those individuals, hey man, you seem to have it really squared away. And they're really humble. They're almost always humble, and they always say, man, I'm struggling myself, but here are if it helps you, here's what
I think that's the key to knowing somebody actually kind of I wouldn't say is completely squared, but is kind of squared away.
They have some
the fact
humility.
they go, man, I ain't got my shit together. But,
right. I'm working.
Yeah, but I'm trying.
It's a work in progress, man. But if I can help you in any way, and there's so much growth there.
I think it's those who seem to have that appearance who don't share a lot that you got to watch out for.
Right.
And maybe not want to idolize or look up to. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of social media personalities people look up to nowadays that don't like, hey, this guy's got a big Rolex and a fancy car. But dude, let's dive a little deeper.
Right.
How are your family? Yeah, how are your kids? Yeah. How's your wife? Like, how's your, what?
Well, you look in the New Testament. It's fascinating. You're not supposed to be the leader of a church, even a elder, if you don't have your family in order. It's a fascinating component
Starts at home.
Right. I mean, the kind of leader that we are, one is whatever, is indicative of it seems to be indicative of what's going on in the house.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, how many top level company people, executives you see that maybe their homes aren't in order, but they're serving on all these charities and yada yada yada. I mean, I feel like
priorities.
Yeah. It does start at home, and
not that every organization is operating the same way, but at that level, certainly that's a key component. And I think that there's something to how is home life? How are you doing there? And are you learning? Are you growing? Are you keeping it together?
Well, and dude, that's the survival of our species. Like, is the next generation, right?
Right.
Like.
Well, that's how we decide. I mean, that's like.
Do we really want them playing video games all the time?
Right.
Like,
no.
What does that lead to? Obesity. It leads
to. You just
school shootings.
Opened up a whole nother thing of some psychologist that's going to come on here and have another. I'm probably not the one that you're going to have on for that one.
I should have a psychologist on.
They're fascinating. I get to talk to them all the time.
I know.
We have our own, and they're great to talk to. We do. We have our own. We need them, and they share some really fascinating research, and they're dialed into what's going on in the public sector, and they're reading papers, and then they're also talking about what's going on in the military, and they're doing it from an objective lens. They're not trying to make a point. They're just, hey, here's what we're reading in the data, and here's how you may want to handle certain situations.
Do you think that that being in the military kind of, or I guess the military, what am I trying to say here, promotes those family values and like being intentional with your children?
It does for sure. It's an interesting thing how family oriented the service is, but that doesn't always mean that this is men are deployed, women are deployed, right? A spouse is deployed. Just put it like that. Spouse is deployed. They do everything they can to have the importance of the community around. And I mean, I've seen that in my community where if anything happens, there are so many hands looking to join in and help. And then you see that when that lacks. That's the saddest part, right? And that's kind of what you see outside of the military often. And when it does happen in the service, that's very uncommon because it is set up. It prevents it prevents readiness if individuals aren't prepared. If their family life is struggling,
focus,
right? Then the readiness of that individual is weakened. If the readiness of that individual is weakened, how does that have secondary, tertiary effects down? So you have to have that family. That nucleus needs to be strong,
right? And the foundation of that nucleus needs to be strong too.
Well, and that's where
where's that built,
right?
Which
that's what do you? That question can't be. That's not a public sector answer. That's a private answer.
Yeah.
Right. That's a in the home answer. Definitely don't want the military answering that question.
Well, I don't. You don't want any government sector answering that question, right? Oh, I just completely lost my train of thought. I did have one.
Well,
it's funny how that goes.
We're probably 2 hours in.
Hey, we had fun.
It was good.
It was good. Okay, so we'll go into more of that later because I think there's a really good conversation of what can we do to promote that nucleus in the home more, and how communities. And like one thing that I've seen since COVID that I think is really cool is people have been okay with not being at work as long, been okay with, not, I mean, that could just be laziness too. I don't know. But there's been, it seems like more of an importance on just work-life balance, which is, it has not been the case for many decades.
Yeah, there's COVID has been an interesting thing. I mean, you're in a different world. I mean,
it's been a great. I feel like a very good reset for a lot of things, but I also feel like it. It. I don't know if damaged for a lot of things. I mean, everything happens for a reason. So,
and hopefully, we all learned from the experience, and we'll see how that shakes out.
Conversations to be had in the near future. All right, so a few rapid fire questions because I know we're probably going to need to wrap up here.
Yeah, it's time to work out.
Yeah, time.
I need to work out. You've already worked out.
I've already worked out. It was a great day. PRs for days today.
That is good.
First weightlifting.
And you competed. What did you hit? Put those numbers out, or do you just want to
I'll put those numbers out because they're humble. They're humble numbers.
But in a meet, they're perfect.
They were. Yeah, I mean, I hit my numbers.
That's the thing.
That's what I was happy about. I have recently started focusing a little more on my weightlifting than on CrossFit. CrossFit is my primary source of training, just for those who don't know. I own a CrossFit gym in Westfield, Indiana. So just the last couple of months, I've been focusing more on my weights, and my buddy John North put together this Gladiator weightlifting league. Him and Greg, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of his last name, so I apologize, Greg, if you see this, but Greg Duquette.
I'm not familiar.
Maybe we'll have both of them on at some point. But anyways, and so it's called the Gladiator Weightlifting League. It's a Zoom weightlifting league that started around COVID time because people couldn't compete. And this was a way to keep people training for something. And so we had John out for a weightlifting seminar in September. He told us all about it. We're like, oh, it sounds great. So we did our first one, myself and my assistant coach Logan, and so I opened with 215 on my snatch, which was my PR up until today, and hit 220 on my second attempt, and that dastardly number 225, I just could not. I've hit a plateau. I've been hitting 215 for a while now, and just cannot hit 220 today.
What do you think's keeping you back?
It's probably just a mental thing because the weight moves. The weight gets up there every single time. It's just catching it. So I know kind of what I need to focus on to get that position stronger. And then hit or open with 285 on the clean and jerk, and then hit 290. So I was happy with it. Again, humble numbers, very humble numbers. They're CrossFit athletes and weightlifters doing much than that. So, but
everybody starts somewhere.
And I'm happy about it. We got the CrossFit Open coming up, so that'll be fun. And then our gym is hosting a partner competition in March 25th. So pretty excited about that. So I may compete in that. So we'll see. Competition is something we all need. Something we all need for
100%
something to train for, to test ourselves, to put ourselves in the arena. Yeah, because we're all not in a physical arena day to day anymore. Some of us are.
Yeah, you're not wrong though.
Not all of us can be, and
but any arena. I mean, getting that blood up, having to deal with some cortisol release and stress, good stress hormones,
those nerves.
I mean, that is good. It formulates so much. It forms so much for an individual to be able to deal with that stomach issue. Yeah, that anxiety,
the prep. Right before it, the tapering, if you want to do it, the mindset,
all that goes into it.
Shout out to Logan. He didn't even taper. Caitlin is our general manager and head coach here, and she had him. I mean, because he's getting ready for the Open, so this is just kind of a fun meet. But he hit, I think he hit a new PR on his clean and jerk, and I may be wrong. He may have hit a PR on his snatch today too. So it was fun. We had a good day.
That is good. That's a great day.
It was a lot of fun. So. Yeah, that. We'll have some drinks.
What you got for these rapid? Yeah, we will.
Yeah, we will.
Hamburgers. Burgers. Bourbon.
Well,
you can do whatever you want. What are these questions you got for me?
All right, so we'll wrap up with some rapid fire questions here. What would you define success as?
We've all sat through this.
Crap, here goes another hour.
Yeah, I know. We've all sat through this. A successful life is one lived in the pursuit of honoring God and then fulfilling I would argue fulfilling my obligations, I guess. Fulfilling my obligations to my family, my friends, my community, the gifts that I've been given, and not wavering from doing what I know is right according to my beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I can go out with that, I'm good.
That's good. What would be one book you'd recommend everyone? One.
Well,
you get one
Bible?
choice.
Oh, that's so hard.
I mean, is the Bible the one you'd recommend, or do you want to like obviously is the Bible just obvious for you and you want to say something else?
Well, the Bible. I mean, I don't know how you. I guess if I could, if I gave one book, man, that is such a tough question. I have so many just filtering through. I think I would go with the Bible. I mean, I would tell him to start in the book of Romans. Ooh. That's what I would do. Why? That's what I would do.
Why would you have him start in the book?
If anybody listens to this, that's what I would have him do. I mean, I think that the book of Romans has had such a profound impact on so many people that both did not believe or believed, and then it shifted their life. It was life changing. I mean, Martin Luther was changed through reading of the book of Romans. And then from there we have the Reformation. My wife was shifted. I remember the voicemail that I received. I was on navigation phase when she called, cool. and I was crying and in joy of reading that book. And then St. Augustine. St. Augustine wrote the Confessions, was changed through that book. Because it's important that we understand the Bible at one time was composed of these different. There were 66 books, but right. I mean, it wasn't always so bound up nicely in this leather-bound edition of the New King. I mean, that's not how it's always been. Right. So at one time, that was a separate book, and I know I have gone back and read that book more than I have read any other book in total of any of material I have read, and I probably quote that more than I quote anything else when I'm talking to myself or
well, even if you're not a believer, it's the book of life, right? It's
Romans just offers too much. It offers so much, and we can't really get around it. I mean, sure, there's other reads for sure.
There's not many things out there that teach about life in a non-materialistic way. Yeah. Self-improvement books, people. That's number one.
I struggle with this. The original, the OG.
The OG self-improvement, not one written by a con artist.
Right.
Oh, man. What's next?
From here?
Yeah.
Oh, for me. So, yep. I am currently preparing to apply to law school. I'll be getting out of the military in November, and sad day for me, for sure. But it's the right decision.
Next step in life.
Need to be back here, back in Indiana, back home.
Back home again.
Yeah. Never thought I'd come here again. I was hoping to be in Idaho, killing animals and eating my own meat.
Not just killing animals, guys.
And eating
those animals too.
It's gonna be great. That's right. All kinds of large game up there. But yep, come here and then work on. I've wanted to, if back in the day, I wanted to either go to seminary, join the military, or be a lawyer. I don't think I would make a great pastor, but I think I could defend. I would like to defend the church. I would like to defend anything that is good if I have that opportunity. Yeah, and I don't. That's probably not the problem. It's probably more just a struggle with patience, I suppose.
One of the many virtues.
So yeah, for sure. That's like a sub virtue. So thankfully, I'm not violating a key virtue, I suppose. But yep. So I really look forward to getting in there and into that pursuit. I'm obviously non-traditional, so a little bit older to be, but some life experience going into it, and then seeing where there's places that the law can really have a huge impact in our daily life.
Yeah.
And understanding that, I think, is impactful, and then defending those that need defense. It sounds.
What's your plan with law school? Do you plan to, because you're studying for the LSAT right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you'll get into law school hopefully around beginning of the spring semester of 24, right?
Either spring, depending on where I'm accepted. There's a part-time program here in Indy, and they have a springtime part-time.
Okay.
And then could get accepted. Could start then, or I will be applying in August, so that would prepare me for the academic year 24.
Okay.
Which would be the start. So
and what's the goal with that? Because like you're not wanting to just be like an attorney, right?
No, I want to work in policy.
I shouldn't say just an attorney.
Right.
That takes a lot of work. So sorry.
It does take a lot of work. Yep.
Poop on that.
Both of my in-laws are attorneys, and they work pretty hard.
Yeah.
And certainly worked very hard to get to where they are. But I would like to work in policy. I mean, I want to be in government some way. I like it there. I like
government in what way?
Work with the legislator.
Okay.
Whoever it can be. I like the work that some people are doing.
Yeah. And
I would like to be a part of that when I'm out. And
do you want to elaborate on what work you want to be a part of?
No, not until November.
Okay.
But that's where I would like to be. I'd like to be fighting those for. I mean, the fight continues, right? It's like that's the thing. A lot of us are always looking for where's that fight? Where's the next fight?
Yeah.
And the military's over, and then I need to go somewhere else where I feel like there's a good fight to be had. So
there's a lot to fight for right now in the private sector too, or in the maybe not private sector, but in the civilian life.
Right. I mean, in politics, I think that there's that's where I would like to be. I would like to be in that. I don't really want to run for office. I'd rather support those who are running. I don't want to really be the face for it at all. But I'd like to work with those who are the face. I mean, that takes a lot of courage for really any of them to go out. They put their face out there and they put their name out there. And that takes a lot of courage. So there are
a lot of sacrifice too. That's
right. Your entire family's in on that.
Right.
So that's a tough pill to swallow, but I would like to work with those people, and really both sides. Because I think that's really what we need more now than. It's odd that our country is so polarized. It hasn't always been that way. There has been a time where we were a little bit more civil, which would probably be the second book I'd recommend. There's a book called Civility by a Yale professor. It's a great book.
Yeah.
But it gets into, the lack of civility and how we should be able to have more, even if we disagree. And it comes from that guy was an attorney.
Yeah.
And then continued on in his education and became a professor.
Basically what you're saying with that is we should be able to be sane and have conversations with people we disagree with.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a sad thing to not, because now we're all living like, oh, well, I got my buddies over here and you've got your buddies over there. And we're never coming together and having good discourse together. And we're not better for that. So and I'd like to bridge. I would like to be a part of just small cog, right? It's like at the end, what are you going to say? Sure. I could say, well, nothing I ever do is going to matter, and take that very stoic, outlook, right? All is for nothing, or some, what's the book of Ecclesiastes is very stoic, it's all dust, right? Or I can just do whatever it is that I feel called to do and work in that path. And then if it amounts to something, then that's good. At least I know I was doing my best. Yeah. That's really where I'm at.
I had a conversation with a friend the other day who's on the other side of that politically than I am. And it was a fine conversation. Yeah. And it's like, why can't we just do more of this?
Yeah.
We don't, I mean, I'm sure people disagree with me and I disagree with other people, but it doesn't mean we can't be friends.
That's right. Yeah. There's great people on both sides. And I think that we have a lot working against us.
Well, and I think we all have a common goal too. That's the other thing, is it's not that we're fighting not necessarily for the same thing. It's that we just have all these narratives.
We're told that we can't get along.
Right.
I mean, we are an algorithm away from complete polarization. So, and that's the sad part. And it is odd, because you get into the same room with some people who may be online, it'd be a vociferous argument, but face to face, it's
actually a civil conversation.
And you're probably going to have the opportunity to do that here, which is pretty cool. But
I am not going to read my comments, which there probably won't be many for a while, but I'm not reading them. So well, just FYI, listeners, if you want to get my attention, that's not the way to do it because I will ignore them.
No, his phone number. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Thanks, bud.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Last but not least here, what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Well, I know it's very important here. Legacy. I mean, I guess my legacy is whatever I leave to my children. That's like my direct impact. Mm-hmm. And I pray that my children live an honorable life, and I believe that is gonna come from what they see at home. Mm-hmm. So whatever they do is kind of like the Jesse Pimental legacy.
Yeah.
I'm less concerned about anything I do on my own because how many people have done great things that you don't read about in any history book? Yeah. That books would be significantly larger than they are. Mm-hmm. But that legacy to my family, I would like to set them up, in a really a way from the inside out. Build their character through meeting them where they are would be a really important part of any legacy I meet. So, I mean, each one of my 5 children is uniquely created and
uniquely and wonderfully made.
That's right. And mm-hmm. I cannot treat each one of them the same. Yeah. I have to treat them differently, and they're going to respond differently to each thing.
Yeah.
And I would argue that that's probably the legacy I want to leave is the next generation are my 5, because my 5 are going to be more powerful than this one.
Yeah.
Their 5 voices have the potential to be, and then their 5 impact 5.
Man. Everybody impact. Choosing not to have kids. That right there is a something.
Yeah, I used to joke about that. I'll save that joke for a later date. But but there's the folks who are very proudly putting children onto this earth. I pray that they're all focused on the same thing. Yeah. I mean, if we're all focused on that, then no matter where we kind of do it, it should be fine. Yeah, should all be fine. Yeah. So that's probably that'll be my legacy.
Boom.
So because it'll be time for me to go. I won't know.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah, man.
Cool, man. All right. Well, yeah, it'll be fun.
Boom.
You go get a workout and burgers and drinks later.
Sounds good.
All right, bro.
All right, buddy.
Later.
Boom.
That was good. That was fun.
It was fun.